did here and has done here, trying to muck up this election result, doesn't necessarily just end here. Late last week, a group of Michigan voters represented by the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, they sued President Trump personally and his re-election campaign, alleging that all of these multiple legal challenges, and specifically the president personally pressuring Michigan elections officials, amounted to an illegal act of mass voter suppression, especially against black voters. And that lawsuit tonight remains live, as does the question of accountability for what's happened here in the 20 days since the election. Joining us now is Sherrilyn Ifill. She's president of the NAACP Legal Defense and Education Fund. Ms. Ifill, it's great to see you. Thank you very much for making time tonight.
Thank you for having me, Rachel.
I first have to ask if the decision in Michigan to certify the election results has any effect on your lawsuit and the aims of your plaintiffs here.
Well, we've been monitoring this very, very closely. We monitored the actions of the president that we could learn this weekend, and of the two Republicans who went to meet with him at the White House, and we're going to continue monitoring. Obviously, today we were happy to see, and we, you played at the top of the show the member of the canvassing board saying we have to uphold the rule of law. We were happy and gratified to see that today. But whether or not Mr. Trump is successful in his attempts to coerce, the attempt to coerce and to intimidate members of the canvassing board in Wayne County and then the state canvassing board to somehow discredit the vote of black voters in Detroit, nevertheless is a violation of Section 11B of the Voting Rights Act. And so while the outcome of today is a positive one for the rule of law, a positive one for democracy and for this country and for the voters we represent, we are still standing by, and we have yet to know what more this president might try. And of course, Michigan is not the only place in which he may be focusing his attention. We're also concerned about Pennsylvania and about Milwaukee, because the president has cited those places as well, and particularly targeting cities with large or predominant black populations to suggest that there has been some fraud in voting.
Let me ask you just to expand on that a little bit in a civic sense, because I feel like one of the things that we are I feel like we're entering a new phase. We've got the GSA ascertaining that President-elect Biden is going to be the next president. There should be a transition process. The president basically acceding to that. We've got this thing that's ended in Michigan in terms of the certification. And I feel like we're sort of now waking up to new realities. One of the things that I'm concerned about is what the Trump administration is going to do during this lame duck period and in the transition to try to set the place on fire, proverbially, as they go. But I think a lot of people are also worried about what you were just describing there, about these tactics, both by the president and by his campaign and by Republicans who support him, that after an election, elections officials are now subject to lobbying, subject to pressure, subject to enticement or threats in a way that should get them to do whatever their party or the party in power or anybody else who has an effect in terms of influencing them can get them to do. I want to go back to that not being a norm in our democracy. I'm worried that now that the Trump administration has set this precedent, it will be. And it feels like the only way to stop that becoming the new normal, at least in Republican politics, is for some people to go to jail for it or to feel like they are going to get in trouble if they get caught doing something like that. Is that the right way to think about it?
I think it is, and let me add another norm to it, Rachel, which is that what the president has done and has done systematically and deliberately is to advance a norm in which the votes that are cast in majority black cities or predominantly black cities are seen and tainted in some way as being fraudulent or there being something wrong with them. We saw this outside when the canvassers were counting the votes the day after election in Detroit. And we saw, all of these people standing outside saying, stop the count. And the president had people going back and forth about stop the count, count all the votes. But the places he was targeting, the racist dog whistle was Philadelphia, Atlanta, Detroit, Milwaukee. I understand that people want to say those are just democratically controlled cities, but I'm not going to pretend that the dog whistle is not what it is. because those of us who do this work have been putting up with the myth of voter fraud targeted in this racialized way for more than a decade. It's never been substantiated, the presence of widespread voter fraud, and yet it's been used as the excuse for all kinds of voter suppression tactics, voter ID laws and purges and so forth, all of which we've had to fight and overcome to try and ensure that Black voters have a right to participate in the political process. So not only is the president announcing the norm that you can scorch the earth, you can have officials stay at the Trump Hotel and drink Dom Perignon after having a private meeting with you at the White House during the period of canvassing, but that you can also hit the low-hanging fruit. You can also call back that canvasser in Wayne County who said that she would accept the other votes in Wayne County, but she wouldn't accept Detroit. It's also the advancing of this racial narrative about voting, I'll say racist narrative about voting, that suggests that there is some fraud connected with votes that are cast by majority Black voters in cities around this country. This is so toxic. This is so dangerous. It is also so grotesque. I think about this summer when some of these very same members of Congress, leaders of the Republican Party who have been silent while Mr. Trump has done this, offered these encomiums to John Lewis and purported to understand the sacrifice that he made on the Edmund Pettus Bridge throughout his career. And yet they have stood by and allowed this terrible casting of Black votes with this imprimatur of fraudulence that is so dangerous. And so we think that's part of the reason why we have to pursue this as well. It's important. It's not nothing, and it's not just about the outcome. It's about the full citizenship of Black people, the right to participate in the political process and have our votes cast and counted, and have our votes have the same value as the votes cast by anybody else in our society.
That's exactly right, and so well put. It's about accountability and consequences for these tactics built on the kind of foundation that you're describing. Sherrilyn Ifill, President and Director Counsel of the NAACP Legal Defense and Educational Fund. Our country is lucky to have you fighting these fights. Thank you for being here tonight. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Rachel. I appreciate it.